r/AskReddit. People of Reddit knew celebrities before they were famous. How different do they act now? My grandpa, rest in peace, owned a grocery store in Miami in the late 70s. Wesley Snipes and his friends once stole some candy from his store, and when he caught them, he let them have it. Since then Wesley and his friends were regulars. Once, Wesley left his bike in front of the store, and it got stolen. Was a pretty bad area. My grandpa gave him his old bike that he kept in the back of the store. My uncle took over in 2001 when my grandpa died. In 2007 he came back to the store while my uncle and cousin were there to ask about my grandpa. My uncle said they talked for a little over an hour about how my grandpa treated him like a son. When he found out my grandpa passed he felt guilty he didn't visit sooner. He embraced my uncle and cousin and left. My uncle said he told him they plan on having the building repainted while they talked. About a week later a crew of painters arrived and told my uncle they were already paid to have the building repainted. Such a genuine dude. Edit. Sorry I haven't been able to reply to everyone, but thank you guys so much for love. Even though he's often portrayed negatively, glad to see that people still try to find the best in us, even it's a small gesture. Work in a restaurant about 15 years ago as a manager. Rachel McAdams walked in for an interview. She was still in acting school and serving table to pay for it. She worked at my restaurant over the course of the next 2 summers, serving on our patio. Still friends to this day. She hasn't changed a bit. Still bikes to get groceries. I went to high school with Sandra Rowe. She was funny, dynamic, smart, outgoing, and very into drama. In one school play, she played what I will call sort of a mime character. She didn't have lines, but was still a big part of the action, commenting on what was going on through her actions. Anyhow, in one scene as she was exiting the stage she banged her head on one of the props. You could hear the loud bang, but she was a pro and just carried on. It has been great to see her have such success, and I love that she has kept in touch with her close friends from high school. You can spot them at awards shows sometimes. My aunt used to work with Gordon Ramsay's mother, but never made the connection. Once they were out for lunch and he ended up coming in to see his mum and met my aunt in the process. She said he was so lovely and polite. Plus my dad has a bunch of Gordon's old jumpers he didn't want anymore. Not signed or anything like that. It's just a fun family story now. I went to college with Joe Keery aka Steve Harrington in Stranger Things. He was my college boyfriend's sweet mate and just the nicest guy. His hair has always been dreamy and amazing. Last time I saw him was at a viewing of The Hateful Eight after we graduated, and he still made a point to come over and say hi. Edit. Spelling. I went to school with Rupert Grint, Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. I was into acting too, so we had done a few school plays together. He was really nice, very chill, a good laugh. I haven't seen him since school days, but he kept coming to classes whenever he wasn't filming, was always happy to chat about the movies. Sometimes he'd need a little break from so many people wanting to talk and would come and hang out in the library, and honestly, you'd never know he was in the biggest film series at the time. Honestly, I think a lot of these answers boil down to if they want fame or not. Rupert loved what he was doing, but didn't care about being famous and having people kiss his butt. Just a nice normal kid. I knew Robert Pattinson about 15 years ago. Nice guy, friendly, a lot of fun to be with. He lived by himself in the center of Soho, London, in a tiny one-bed flat that I think he felt like the romantic vision of a starving artist, or at least wanted to. He had a weird side. He'd say random, violent, depraved things. He was obsessed with Jack Nicholson. He never really gave a fuck. He had confidence, and he was always himself, and he knew he could be deliberately contradictory, and he used that as a personality trope. But he was a good guy, and I get the impression he's very comfortable with himself, now that he has developed his career, that he acts very well, and that he can pick and choose his roles based upon what he wants to do, and who he wants to work with. Twilight for him was always a means to an end, and I think he worked it very much to his benefit, and didn't compromise himself. Bruno Mars's mom was a bartender at a local karaoke dive bar that I was a regular at. At the time, his biggest hit was The Hook for Billionaire by Travie McCoy. Anyway, she was selling tickets for an upcoming concert he was having, and she asked our table if we wanted to buy some. My friend declined, and she exclaimed, "Why not? He's my son." I ended up getting a couple of tickets despite not knowing any of Bruno Mars's songs. It turned out to be one of the best concerts I've ever been to. The guy knows how to put on a good live show. The tickets were only $40 each, I think. His opening act was a local group of large Polynesian men singing Motown who went by the name Nesian 9. They were pretty good too. The next time he was in town for a concert, he had blown up, and the tickets were going for $400. I would have loved to see him again, but not at that price. His mom was really nice, down to earth, and a pretty good singer herself. Rest in peace, Bernie. At least she lived long enough to see her son's success. I was local production contact on Hugh Jackman's touring theater production, where he sang his favorite numbers from various musicals. Usually when a show comes in with big name stars, the star usually has a bunch of assistants, and they do the job they are paid to do, and that's it. The actor come on stage when needed, then back to their dressing room, and if you need anything, or if they need anything, you talk to the assistant. Prior to the first performance, I'm on stage dealing with a few little issues, trying to stay on schedule when Mr. Jackman walks out on stage, and my first thought was that he was going to be angry that we have kept him waiting to do his sound check. Instead, he walks directly over to me, introduces himself, asks me my name, and asks a couple of questions, and doesn't even mention the delays. So we spoke for a few minutes, and then he went around and introduced himself to more of the local crew. I was a little blown away by meeting him, as I'm a fan, and thought that was really cool of him. Fast forward a week and I'm backstage after the performance, and I bump into Mr. Jackman in the hall. I say hi, but don't want to bother him, but he stops me. He remembers my name after meeting hundreds of people that week, and asks a few questions that related to our first conversation. Here's the thing though. The guy just did a 2-hour performance, and instead of just politely returning my greeting, he stopped and talked for a few moments with no false sincerity. To this day I'm still blown away by how genuinely nice he was, and always wondered what he was like before he became famous. He would also spend a huge amount of time after the show signing autographs and answering questions at stage door. My mom is friends with Johnny Knoxville's cousin. She met him once and had no idea who he was. She said he was nice and funny as all hell. She didn't realize until years later she'd even met him, until I showed her one of his movies. From what I gather, he's a normal dude and pretty hilarious. One of my aunts actually dated Bill Gates for a bit. I believe a few years before things took off for him. She said he was too into her or something like that at the time, and weirded her out, I guess. Sorry about the lack of detail. I went to high school with Post Malone. We graduated the same year. He always wore a suit to class and was that nerdy, dedicated kid. Glad to see how his life turned out. I hope nothing for the best for him, and now I listen to him all the time, haha. I'm just a rando to him though. We never really talked. Typo. Jennifer Lawrence. I moved to Louisville middle of 7th grade year. She was my first friend, and the first person I had a sleepover with. We hit it off. She was very different from me, a cheerleader. Came from a lot of wealth, but her family was really awesome, and we were both kinda weird and outgoing, so we become good friends very fast. Her family owned a farm that had a children's summer camp, hi ho, and we went to it a couple of times. She had one of her birthday parties there. I remember her kissing our friend John under a trampoline. We talked about it for way too long. We hung out fairly often until she moved to New York City a year and a half after we met. We started taking acting classes together in 8th grade at a local theater here in town, Walden Theater. It's funny because on our first day, we had no idea we were both taking the class. I walked into the first one, and there she was. We were both so excited to have a friend. We were in the first level of the theater, but after a couple weeks, both moved to the intermediate class. We were the oldest people in the class, so that's why they moved us up so fast. We carpooled together to Walden Theater every Tuesday and Thursday for acting class. I would ride the bus home with her. Her mom would take us to class, then my mom would pick us up and take her home. She was a natural at acting, I'll tell you that. I was still somewhat shy, but she could pretty much be given any character, and even though she was 14, you'd believe it. She always talked about how she had a photographic memory, and that's how she was able to remember lines so easily. And she did. It was insane. Asterisk, I have read where she said she's had no prior acting, but this isn't true. I'm not sure if she said this for a part of her look, or maybe she considered it informal, but we definitely took acting classes our entire 8th grade year. I will say, what you see with her is what you get. She was always very quirky, kinda weird, which was funny, because she was so presenting, but really wasn't like that. She was very loud, made her presence known. It's been bizarre seeing her in interviews, because she acts the exact same. I remember she moved to New York City to pursue modeling between 8th and 9th grade. It worked because soon after she was in a commercial for Burger King, and a couple of MTV's My Sweet 16 commercials as well. She was doing online classes for our high school, Ballard High School, and came to visit one time in 9th grade and another in 10th grade. I squealed when I saw her. I genuinely missed her. I had no idea she was about to become one of the most famous actresses of our generation. I always hear she comes to town for holidays, but at this point I have no idea how to contact her. She had a private Facebook for a while, assuming it was really her. For a time, I had a few fake accounts for her request to be my Facebook friend, along with a lot of people we went to school with. The last time we spoke was for my 21st day. I'm 29 now, but I would love to catch up with her. I can't help but wonder if she remembers me. I still have her yearbook photo she signed hanging up in my room. Our yearbooks and a couple photos from a disposable camera. Wow, you made it and reached the end of the video. Subscribe for more Reddit contents. See you in the next video.